Okay, hello and welcome to another video where we're going to look at IGCSE economics. This is chapter 6 of IGCSE economics, where I'm going to be talking about the role of markets in allocating resources. Now, let's begin by looking at the three fundamental questions that every economy must address. So there are three fundamental questions. These questions are very important, and you have to remember them throughout your IGCSE course. Right, the first question is what to produce. So an economy wants to know what to produce. Is it going to produce more of this and less of that? The second question is how to produce it. How to produce what they need to produce, and who is to receive the product that has been produced. In some books, this can be written as for whom. For whom. So we are producing for who. So the three questions again: what to produce, how to produce, and who is to receive, or for whom. Now, these decisions are very important because of the problems we discussed in chapter 1 of unlimited wants and limited resources. So it's very important to address these questions. And how these questions are going to be answered is going to depend on the economic system of a country. And this basically talks about how the institutions in a country, how they are organized, and how they influence economic behavior. You're going to understand that when you look at the next section. So again, remember the three fundamental economic questions that a country must answer are what to produce, how to produce, and for who. All right. Let's look at the three different economic system. It's three of them. So one is called planned economic system. Another one is called the market economic system, and another one is called the mixed economic system. So we have planned, market, and mixed economic system. So there are three. Now, as the name suggests, you're going to find out that it means exactly what the name suggests. So the first one is called planned. Another word for planned can also be called a command economy. So it can also be called command economy. And this is basically where the government makes crucial decisions. So in other words, in a planned economic system, the government is going to be answering those three fundamental questions of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom. So the government makes those decisions, and land and capital are owned by the state, and resources are allocated by directives. We're going to find out. So directives are basically instructions given by the state to state-owned enterprises. Right. Moving on. The market economic system, on the other hand, so the planned economic system, as we said, the government makes crucial decisions. In a market economic system, this is where consumers determine what is produced. Resources are allocated by something called the price mechanism, and land and capital are privately owned. So land and capital are privately owned. In other words, factors of production will be owned by households and firms. Then we go to mixed economic system. As the name suggests, this will be a combination of market and planned. And this is basically where both private and public sectors play a role in the market, in the economy. So again, the different economic systems are planned economic system, where the government is making decisions. We have the market economic system, which operates basically without a government. And you have the mixed economic system, which is a combination of the two economic systems. Right. Let's just for a minute look at the nature of the market system. And what you're saying here is that in a market economic system, there is minimal government intervention, and the private sector decides how to produce goods and services that the consumers, of course, want. So the consumers are aiming for the lowest price, and the producers will be aiming to produce at the lowest cost, but produce the highest quality. So lowest cost and highest quality. And consumers will be aiming to get highest quality at the lowest price. Right, now there are two words here you need to remember. One of them is capital intensive and labor intensive. And basically these two words, these two combinations of words, capital intensive means that production uses a high proportion of capital when compared to labor. While labor intensive means that production is using a high proportion of labor in proportion to capital. So capital intensive, they're using more capital. And labor intensive, they're using more labor. Remember, labor is the human factor in the production process. Right. Distribution of products is determined by income. We're going to look at that just in a moment. And people with high skills that are in high demand and entrepreneurs who are successful can consume more because, of course, they can pay in a market system. Those who have more resources are going to be able to afford more goods and services. Now, let's look at a concept here called the role of the price mechanism. And so, as we said, the price mechanism is the way decisions are made by households and firms in allocating resources in a market economic system. So it basically, there's an interaction between demand and supply. We're going to cover these two chapters, demand and supply, next, chapter 7 and 8. But basically, demand is the willingness and ability of a consumer to buy a product. And supply is the willingness of a supplier to bring a product into the market, or a producer to bring a good into the market. Now, this is the role of price mechanism. One of them is to to provide an incentive. Another one is to show efficiency in the market, and another one is rationing, and another one is signaling. Let's look at the first one, which is provide an incentive. So if the consumer demand for a product rises, the price is likely to increase as well, and this will provide a profit incentive, and firms are likely to produce more and also hire more workers or buy more capital. So if demand for a product increases, firms will have an incentive to make profit, and therefore they're going to produce more. So it will be an incentive. Price mechanism also shows efficiency in the market. It shows what's called a market equilibrium, and this is where demand and supply are equal at the given price. And if these two are not equal, we call that a market disequilibrium. I'm going to show you that in just a moment. The next role of price mechanism is to do what's called rationing, and this is when supply is less than demand. In other words, people are demanding more of this product, then price mechanism will act this way. The price is going to increase so that fewer people can afford this product. So it's a rationing mechanism. So I'm going to show you the market equilibrium. As I've said here, this is an example of a demand and supply curve. So that axis is going to be called price, and this axis is going to be called quantity. This is your typical demand curve, and this is your typical supply curve. So the demand curve is going to be sloping from left to right, and the supply curve is going to be a positive curve from left to right. And this point here, where the two graphs meet, which I can just maybe use another color to show you, this point here. Sorry, I'm going to just go back there a minute. I'm going to just choose the small, tiniest. Right, so this point here, we're going to call that the equilibrium quantity. So equilibrium quantity, and this point here is the equilibrium price. So we have what is called the equilibrium price. This is also called the market clearing price. And you have the equilibrium point. So at this point where demand and supply are meeting, this is called the market equilibrium. If at any chance maybe price increases or price is lower, we get what is called a market disequilibrium. All right, let's wrap this thing up. So key terms that you learn in this chapter. So we have what is called an economic system. So the institutions, organization, mechanisms that influence economic behavior and determine how resources are allocated. We also learned about the planned economic system. We learned about directives. We learned about the mixed economic system, market economic system. We have the price mechanism. We have capital intensive, methods of production. We have labor intensive, demand, supply, market equilibrium, and market disequilibrium. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share my video. Subscribe. See you in the next video and have a lovely day.